Welcome to the Honest Hour. I'm your host, Luis Acevedo, and there's quite a bit going on, as always. First, I want to start off with the news in Europe. Well, actually, let's start off with Nancy Pelosi, because that's the thing that everybody is really concerned about or interested in, whether or not she'll be going to Taiwan. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about it, and at that time, we knew that Taiwan was not a part of her itinerary as she was going to travel through the Asian countries. But as of this morning, it has been revealed, at least by some alleged Taiwan officials, she will be definitely going to Taiwan. Obviously, China's not thrilled by this, so we'll see exactly how this plays out. They're doing some drills in the sea by Taiwan as Nancy Pelosi is supposed to be flying over. And we know that the Chinese government have stated this is their red line, analogous to Ukraine being Russia's red line. And if that is really their red line, and Nancy Pelosi crosses that red line, well, it's World War III. Localism equals base. It is based. It's still hiring my hometown. It's insane. Yeah, so we'll get into all that stuff here in a second. But, yeah, that is what's going on with Nancy Pelosi. Apparently she's going there. Don't know why she's going there. She doesn't even represent – I've already talked about this numerous times. It's just a provocative mood by the United States, and it will not work out in our favor. And it's not good. Not good whatsoever. Now, let's go into what's going on in Europe, mainly as a result of the Ukraine war, which is an insane thing to even be a part of as the Western nations. Let Russia and Ukraine do their thing. But Ukraine was actually inspired to do what they're doing because of the Western countries. If it weren't for the Western countries, this may have never happened. But now we are where we are, and the Netherlands and Finland and a bunch of European countries are paying the price because their government wants to do two things: stand in solidarity with Ukraine and combat climate change. Excuse me. But why? I don't know. That genetics, man. Genetics. Are you from an Asian family? Just curious, why do you have the Cash App and the show topics? Well, if you guys find any value in the content that I bring you, we make about 7 live streams a day. So if you want to support, you can support, or you can just send money through the way that they have it set up on TikTok. Either way, if you feel that this is valuable in any way. So anyway, the Netherlands, they are now stockpiling firewood for the winter. They're getting ready for the rising energy prices and energy crisis that is taking it. No way I'm sending my money to anybody on TikTok. That's totally your prerogative. Nobody's sitting here begging you for it. If you feel inclined to, do so. Awesome. Anyway, the Dutch government, while their citizens are stockpiling up on firewood, are saying that the Dutch trees are unsustainable to burn because the logs release carbon dioxide. So while their citizens are preparing not to freeze in the wintertime, their government saying, be careful about the firewood because you may pollute the environment. You may want to just, you and your family, freeze as opposed to polluting the environment, because the climate, right? Humans are parasitic to the earth. So if you freeze during the wintertime, that's better than you releasing CO2 up into the atmosphere and destroying Gaia. So yeah, they're in the middle of stockpiling up on firewood to heat their home simply because the energy prices are rising, and it's becoming in short supply. And the cost of firewood has increased, by like $51. Where could I have the article about firing 1,000 workers? I mean, it's all over the place. You can just Google it. So that's pretty interesting. That's going on in the Europe nations. Now, another thing that's going on in the European nations is Finland. They may close thousands of stores to conserve power. So there's a huge energy issue going on in Europe, and nobody's really talking about this. And a lot of people are going to be suffering come the wintertime for it, maybe even in the United States. So right here, it is talking about grocery stores in Finland having to rotate the times that they use power and they don't use power. So they'll have to determine which ones stay open when the other one's open and the other one closed while the other one. So it's insane. So it's insane. There's like 2,800 food stores that will need to be under this same arrangement. And the ones in rural areas. So, I mean, they're just spread out across the whole country. And now they're like, well, you have to turn your lights off and the other one has to turn their lights on. That way, well, we can conserve energy because we have to stay in solidarity with Ukraine and we also have to protect the environment. Good, now the citizens can reap the outcomes of climate Marxism. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Cold kills more people than heat. People never mention that. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty obvious, is it not? How bad do you think unemployment will be in the next few months? I don't think it'll be that bad. I mean, there's still places hiring like crazy where I'm at. I think that there's going to still be an abundance of jobs. I think you'll always be able to find work. And even if you can't find quote unquote employment, you can always employ yourself. There's so many things that you can do here in America and the, foundation we've created in the economy. I think that things are falling apart, but there's a lot to be optimistic about, I believe. So yeah, that's what's going on in Europe, all because of Ukraine and climate change. Now let's get into the cuts from Amazon. How is power always in the minority? Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that after we cover what's going on in Amazon. So Amazon cuts 100,000 employees from their workforce in a single quarter. So I'll read a little bit of this article for you. Any good investments now? I'm not an investment advisor. I do like cryptocurrencies. During the bear market, usually the time to start learning about cryptocurrencies. So Amazon, one of the largest tech employers in the world, has revealed that it is now hiring at the slowest pace since 2019 and has cut over 100,000 employees globally. So this isn't just in one plant, it's globally, all over the world, likely due to the dramatic economic slowdown since 2001. Fires is a buzzword. They've reduced by 100,000. Attrition, that's not all firing. Yeah, okay. I mean, they've made cuts, they fired, whatever you want to call that. And it looks like the cuts played a large role in Amazon's recent revenue beat and their rosy profit projections for the third quarter, though it has still lost a net $2 billion in the second quarter. So they lost a lot of money. I mean, they make a lot of money, right? I mean, Amazon's like one of the biggest companies in the world, has one of the richest men in the world running the company. So it's not like Amazon's hurting for money, but they are a business, so they do need to make strategic cuts. I get that. Anyway, so there have been over 30,000 jobs cut by the tech company in the U.S. in the past few months alone, and unemployment claims have climbed to 8-month highs. So, yeah, let's see if there's anything else here. Company. Yeah, so that's when will I don't know. I know they're talking about it in other states, trying to unionize. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing. That could cause more job loss. I mean, unions do serve a purpose, but are they going to really help out these companies? I don't know. I don't think so. And it's not like people don't get paid well at Amazon anyway. I mean, to work in a warehouse, you're making $15-20 an hour. And I'm not sure what the work environments are. I know I've seen online that they're not the greatest, but I mean, I don't know. You're just working. Do your job. So I don't know. But yeah, so 100,000 people were cut globally from Amazon due to, just poor returns and probably poor management and stuff like that. I don't know about poor management. Probably has a lot to do with what they mentioned in the article, the economic slowdown, locking down everything. But Amazon, if I'm not mistaken, has like kind of their own supply chain. They have like their own private airline. They even have their own ships. I'm not sure. These employees don't make enough to afford union dues, and I come from a union family. Well, there you go. I don't know if that's true. You nonstop freeze. Am I still freezing? Am I freezing right now? Well, hopefully I'm not freezing. I mean, it says I have good internet connection. And my laptop's working just fine for everything else. So interesting that I would be freezing on one and not the other. But all right, so that's what's going on right now. And let's jump into power will always be in the minority. So there's this idea that, if you get enough people that are all enlightened to certain ideas, that they can then come to power and change things. They can, with enough people in enough time, not this moment, freezing can be TT. Yeah, okay. Well, good that I'm not freezing right now. So the idea that, you get the masses onto one idea, and then this idea spreads like wildfire, and then they're all deciding to stand in solidarity and rise up and, become the new power. That never happens in history. It never happens in history. The way it always works is there's a small group of elites, there's a small group of individuals who come together, have a good plan, and then they begin to do their thing as far as, challenging the current power structure, becoming the new power structure, whatever that may be. And I thought this was rather interesting when I was listening to it today on one of the podcasts. I forget the name of it. It's like the Peter something show. And the guy who was on there talking about this, it's this idea of elite theory, the elite theory, or realism, the political realism, that these ideas where the civil rights movement, for one, right? Where, it was all these people protesting in the streets that got everybody these rights. That wasn't actually the case. There were a small group of people who were actually selling you these ideas, saying that we were going to bring change, inspiring you to do something, and you did something, but while they were behind the scenes doing the hard work, you were just protesting in the streets as a pawn in the greater theme of things, which is why I have always, not always, but I've for a while been of the mindset that protests are useless for the most part, because you're just a part of a psyop for some elite group, whether you realize it or not, for them to help push an agenda, right? Because the powers to be that are right there right now, they do have to be kind of fluid in the way that they govern, in that if they begin to have a huge rift between their population and their people, I mean, the population and themselves, that rift is too great. Well, that's when bad things start to happen. That's when you can have another small group of people drive the other, group of people to then switch up on the power players. Greater theme of things. Yeah, I know. Whatever. Yeah. I just go off the fly. So sometimes words get mixed up. It's all good. But the power to be always needs to be aware of the zeitgeist in the moment. However, they do have a great influence of the zeitgeist, and they basically control it in a lot of ways. But if the rift becomes too big, well, then their position is in jeopardy, which is why they need to remain somewhat fluent. It was, for sure. For sure. So that's why I'm saying that the power will always be in the minority. It was a very interesting podcast. And it made me think, just before I got on here, that that's kind of how the story in the Old Testament goes, right? With God leading the Israelites into the tribes of Israel into what would become Israel, and taking it over when they were mostly the minorities, right? They were mostly the party that had the least amount of people, but they had a elite member, that being God, that was sort of giving them the opportunity to do so. You going, my friend? I don't know what you guys are talking about. World War III? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's not a cool thing. But yeah, so I don't know. I thought that was rather interesting because when you really look at it, there never has been a time where the masses got together and took anything over, and it will never work that way, ever. It just will never work that way. And it makes sense why. Because if you have people that are worried about everyday life, right? Whether it be where they're going to get their food from, entertainment, etc., where they don't have this shared vision, there's no coherent objective. Well, how can you have something that's going to, implement power if there's no clear power structure within the movement itself? So it's kind of silly to even think that. And so maybe this is something you guys should think about and consider if you're into protesting and revolutions and stuff like that. They do nothing for the little guy. It always really hurts the little guy and obviously the people in power too, and there's a power shift. Can't be any minorities if we are all American. I don't know what you're talking about. That's not even what I'm saying. See, that's the other thing. I was wondering how I should name these show topics. Specifically, power will always be in the minority, because it has nothing to do about a racial group, but more so about the fact that there are a select group of people who have the power, and there will always be a select group of people that have the power. It will never switch, and the majority never changes the power. It's always another small group of power that changes another group of power. Yeah. But, I mean, as far as races go, obviously there's majorities, minorities. It's just basic numbers. I thought you meant race minority. I mean, yeah, I mean, there are those, right? I mean, that's also factual, but that's not what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty interesting thought and a pretty interesting reality. It's just interesting to see how reality really works and how we're brainwashed to believe it to be some other way. Right? We're told, even in the 1917 revolution, the Bolshevik revolution in the Soviet Union, we didn't really, not we, but they, the Russians, really didn't have much to say about it. It was a small group of people who decided to go through with the plan. And the same thing with the American Revolution. There was a huge amount of people who did not want to go to war with Britain. Like a large amount of people who were like, no, 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 no. We don't want to do that. And there were a small group of people who wanted to go to war with Britain. It's called soccer, not football. Okay. I don't even know where that came from. But, yeah, that's why I would say I'm not really a big fan of protests, revolutions. I think they're really pointless at the end of the day. And most of the people, even if they do wake up to the brainwashing or indoctrination, whatever you want to call it, of the current regime, are just going to fall for the next brainwashing and programming of the next regime to replace it. And then next regime to replacement, it's just going to be cyclical, right? There's always going to be your propaganda, your, intellectual soldiers, if you will, that protect certain ideas. What's the story behind Amazon? They just let 100,000 people go globally. They had a negative return in the third quarter or first quarter, whatever it was. Yeah. And then localism is the way. This is something that we've been discussing quite often on the show here. Localizing your supply chains is obviously, it's not so much obvious anymore, but it is the best thing a person can do. Really, that way you're less dependent on global supply chains, makes you more resilient. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's too many people interacting today. That's totally fine. I get it. It's Monday. Yeah, localism is the way. It definitely is the way. So, yeah, that's pretty much all that I really had to talk about today. And, if anybody in the chat right now wants to hop in, has any comments, stuff like that, totally cool. Bring them on in. If not, maybe back tonight. Probably not, though, but I will be back definitely tomorrow. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the show. This one's going to be a really short one, obviously. And, yeah, so like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, MOT Media. And we'll be back here tomorrow for sure. Tonight, maybe. Like, maybe. Unless, basically I just got to be inspired to come on here again tonight. So, Trump swabs is a nothing burger. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Much love. Peace.